did Katherine Ryan and Ruth Jones. I've done another, but I can't tell you who it is. But hopefully it'll be out in the new year, and it's excellent. I mean, all three of them were just glorious experiences. I mean, with fiction, you're in complete control. Who the protagonist is, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. If your story's not working, you can change any of those things, or change the antagonist, or change the protagonist to the antagonist. I mean, you can do absolutely anything you want until you start making it, and then you're much more restricted. But on paper, you have complete control, and you can make sure there's a midpoint. You can know that at the end you want them to have realized that they were a horrible father all along, and that they, you know, then they either beg for forgiveness or they just accept that they're a horrible father, and, you know, whatever you have, and so you can set your beginning and your inciting incident and all of those. In documentary, we don't have that control, on the whole, because, or in factual, we don't have that control, because you're going out there. I mean, so with the Nick Knowles travel stuff, which is a bit different, but you know, we know what we're going to do, and we sort of know the order. I mean, with the railway stuff, we know the order it's going to go in, but you don't actually know what your contributor's going to say. You don't really know how much Nick is going to love it, enjoy it, excel at it, fail at it, whatever it is, and you ride that tiger and make sure that the story you're telling works for people. With Who Do You Think You Are, you do know, you know, what they do is they approach a celeb, and they say, would you be interested in a Who Do You Think You Are if we were you know, to find a story? And they say yes. Then they go away and they research. Sometimes they don't find enough story, sometimes they find a fantastic story and a fantastic story, but nothing in the middle, and so they can't. They have to find a story that goes from A to Z or A to H or wherever it goes from. It has to have every letter, and every letter has to have a document or a paint, some sort of document to support it. And then they found that out, and then I, the director, writes a script based on that. Sometimes, like with Katherine Ryan, I'd never met Katherine, and you know, I was a little scared of her, if I'm honest, because her persona is can be quite abrasive. And quite early on in the shoot, I kind of nervously said to her, "Oh, do you mind doing another version of that?" She said, "No, of course not, because I want this to be great too." She's lovely. She's really lovely. That's right. And one of the odd things is you spend 10 days with these people right in the thick of their lives, and then you never see them again. You know, I may never see Katherine Ryan again, but you know, I spent quite an intense 10 days with her. But anyway, so I write something, and I write, you know, Katherine's astounded at this, or Katherine cries at that, or Katherine does this, or Katherine does that. You're guessing, but you know that there will be a reaction to the moment where she discovers that 3 children died, or people decided not to go on that bit and they sailed off halfway around the world, or whatever it is. And your job as a director is to make sure that you enter the scene at the point you've written it, and you leave the scene at the point you've written it. And, you know, obviously that involves some work with the celebrity at various times, because they might halfway through the scene go, "Well, that's interesting up there." And you go, "I know it is, but it's not our story." That takes you somewhere that's a dead end, and we can't go there. We've got to go there because and they don't know. They genuinely don't know. And you get those genuine reactions then. So yes, you know. And usually when I'm working with a presenter, so like if I'm working with Ray Mears or Nick Knowles, you know, or any of them, you're talking about what you're going to do next and what you're going to do tomorrow, and how you're going to approach that, and how they might be, you know, how that might work. And with Who Do You Think You Are, you have to just not tell them anything. Then there are certain key moments where, you know, you're about to go to a completely different country, but you can't tell them you're about to go to or you're not going to any different country, and they're going, "Oh, when are we off to Europe?" And you're going, "I'm not going," and they eventually discover that, and you know, thank goodness you passed those moments. The one I just did, there's a moment where we do go off to another country, and we were all absolutely terrified that we would somehow blurt out that we were off to, you know, or "I wonder what you're going to think about this country," and luckily we didn't. Telly is collaborative, I think, and telly should be collaborative. The best, for me, the best and most fun is when everyone's working together, and whether, you know, any of the 5 of us here suggests something, and that takes it in a completely, so like on Who Do You Think You Are, the end of the Ruth Jones, which is gorgeous and glorious if you haven't watched it. And that's partly we made a good program, but it's mostly she's the most amazing person. It's a great story and she is just wonderful. So I thoroughly recommend it. She's just one of the most amazing people I've ever met. And I'm going to give the end away now. You know, she's very family, she's very homely, she's very emotional and connected to her past. And it starts in Porthcawl, which is where her family, she grew up and her family, her mum still lives. And it ends just down the road from Porthcawl.
Oh, wow.
And so we were driving along and I'm kind of saying, well, that's, you know, it's great that it ends at Porthcawl, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the production coordinator said, well, surely she just needs to say something like, I'm utterly delighted that my story that started in that little town of Porthcawl ends in the little lovely town of Porthcawl, or whatever. I can't remember the words exactly, but basically pretty much the words Ruth says were the words that Jade came up with. And I'm like, say that again, Jade. I'm writing it down. And it's there. And that's how it happens.